Okay, so I'm going to start straight away with our conversation because I know that from our rehearsal, we've got a lot to get through. So first of all, Philippe, maybe you could just start out by putting GitOps in context a little for us and why companies need it. What does GitOps bring to companies, including telcos?
I think that it's the perfect question, Henny, to jump in. So when we are talking basically about GitOps, for me, there are two key words and key challenges that are popping in my mind. The first one is about how to scale, the scaling factor, and the second one is about the complexity. And honestly, scaling factor and complexity are absolutely the real triggers when we want to talk about GitOps. And if I want to deep dive a little bit more, it takes whole its sense when we take into account the numbers of applications, the number of services, the size of the services, the complexity of the infrastructure, on-prem, in the cloud, at the edge, in the POP. So basically, something that is very, very important to understand is that we made a tremendous journey since the last, I would say, 20 to 25 years when we are deep diving on the infrastructure topic. For instance, if we all remember back in the early year 2000, basically what we were managing, what we were handling was mainly physical machine. And after we jump into the virtualization era, remember well, Annie, at this time, the lifespan of an application or a service was, and it's not only dedicated for telco industry, 3 to 5 years. It was about weeks to make the deployment. And the complexity basically that we have to manage between the hardware, the infrastructure, the application was around, let's say, hundreds of objects. So it was heavily based on massive monoliths, how to scale up, how to scale down. And here, what is important to keep in mind, it was really very siloed environment, very vertical. Now, let's move very fast forward.
Okay, so now
in the future, and now, yeah, in 2023, basically, what is what are the standards? Container-based, Kubernetes, cloud-native runtimes. Today, the lifespan of application and services is, I would say, between hours and days. We have seconds to make the deployment, and we are managing several thousands of objects in terms of complexity. So here we embrace, I would say, all those ephemeral microservices based that are easy to scale up, scale down, with average duration for container runtime that most of the time is under a few minutes. So from a very, very siloed and vertical approach, we enter into a much more horizontal platform model where the services basically are workloads of a common platform that is fine-tuning all the underlying resources. So that's a total different story. So deploying and managing one application, I would say by hand in this environment could be possible, but when in real life you need to move to tens or hundreds of services, you need to do it in another way. And that's why GitOps, honestly, has become the de facto operating model of the cloud native ecosystem. Here is the story I can share to jump in.
Okay, so I'm just thinking we had a lot of words in there that have big implications. So can we just talk a little bit about the shift from silos and to horizontal platform models rather than a lot of cut off, isolated vertical ones?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, what we observed since the last years back is that what happened on, I would say, startup in digital, then in IT, is exactly happening, I would say, more or less the same way on, I would say, the network and on the telco industry. So here, what the game changer is, it's the convergence of the stack. Basically, today, our customer want more and more comprehensive and consistent experience. It means that we absolutely need to have native bridge, native enablers that are fueling or supporting the runtime of our workloads. So basically here, we have a core foundation in this telco to Techco move that is heavily relying on software play, API play, and as well on the automation. And software API automation are the true booster to move toward this horizontal platform that help to set basically the network infrastructure, then the runtime infrastructure, then the cloud native infrastructure, where you have the runtime as workload of a whole and I would say horizontal platform.
Okay, so all of this really is based on the move from imperative to declarative. And maybe you could say a little bit about why that is so key. And also perhaps, Philippe, not everybody's as up to their eyes in all this as you are. So perhaps you could briefly describe what the difference between those two states is.
For sure, for sure. For me, this move from imperative to declarative is a critical one. If I want to take one very, very non-tech example, let's say you have Mr. and Mrs. Imperative that are going to a restaurant, and basically they will order a steak. They say that they want the steak cooked rare, they want fries with ketchup, they want a side salad and a Coke. Basically the waiter will deliver exactly what they ask for, and they will be charged for a specific price. On the other hand, if Mr. and Mrs. Declarative goes to the same restaurants and they tells to the waiter that they only want to pay perhaps, I don't know, $20 or 20 euros for a dinner, and they are in a mood for steaks, and that's all. And the waiter returns with the steak, a side of mashed potatoes, dinner roll, and a glass of water, and they will be charged to exactly the price that they want. So to say it in another word, managing the state over the direct result is much more future-proof and less prone to error. So with declarative, what is very, very important, you are focused on the model, on the template. You are evaluating the model and the template, and not the instance directly that could shift and evolve over the time.
So you define what you want the outcome to be, and then everything that comes along, you measure whether it fits those parameters.
It's exactly this. And by book, you just gave Henny the definition of a key concept in cloud native, that is the concept of desired state. Basically, the role of Kubernetes, our orchestrator in cloud native, is to manage this desired state. 100% of its time, of every second that is moving, that passed away, basically are here to ensure that this desired state is applied. So to say it in another word, when you're moving from imperative to declarative, you can much more reach, I would say, a better automation level that can open the door for immutability. So in the world that I described about the scaling factor and the complexity, honestly, there is no more room to manage infrastructure like pet, because basically your machine, your infrastructure, your server didn't have a name that you as human will give to it. So it's much more like farming cattle to allow the scaling, taking into account the ephemerability of the infrastructure. So here, what we want to emphasize is that when we want to manage the complexity and when we want to manage the scaling factor, the idea is to tackle the human factor limits and its ability to scale and manage this complexity. So here, the idea in a declarative ecosystem, we do not patch or we do not update the infrastructure or the services anymore. We manage the model, we change the model, and we apply the change by the model to be sure that your infrastructure is always 100% aligned with with what you need in terms of definition. I can and something that is behind very important for me is this notion of speed and the need of speed. I will give you a very concrete example. for instance, here at Orange, basically we released a project called PKO. And PKO, the idea is to bring a very modern cloud-native stack to power mobile private network. We did this project with AWS, HP, and Casa System. And I can testimony that this platform is 100% build, run, and operate the GitOps way. And for resiliency and proof of quality of services, keep in mind that this platform is killed every night and recreated every day. 100% of the infrastructure, 100% of the services. And honestly, if it haven't been done, I would say the declarative way with GitOps as operating model, it would have been very challenging to, I would say, manage the time for having all those rollout and deployment.
So really, I mean, I like your point about you can't scale humans. It doesn't matter how many humans you had, we still couldn't do it because you couldn't have enough all doing the things that are need doing in the time allowed. It's just not possible. Never mind the relationship between all the humans and what they're doing as well.
You're right. And here, if we just refer back to a very recent past, a lot of companies basically focus heavily on CI/CD systems. So on the fact that they want to have an industrial way of building things and to deploy things. And it can be, honestly, very managed the declarative way and very automated. But what I observed since the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years, is that a lot of those companies are hitting what I'm calling the scaling wall. Because honestly, as far as the complexity of your infrastructure is moving forward and the number of applications is, I would say, heavily evolving, and your already application need to evolve to embrace innovation or new feature. It means that if by book, by design, if you do not integrate, I would say, the fact to manage your operation by code in the same pipeline than the one you open with your CI/CD, it comes very, very challenging to scale, because if you only automate up to the build and your deployment and not on your operation, it means that you will rely heavily on human activities on the operation side. So it means that you're able to build, to deploy, but it's very challenging on the scaling of the operation.
So you're saying that really all these profound changes demand a completely new operating model, because the old one is simply not fit for purpose. And that's really kind of where this huge dependence on cloud native comes in, because we need cloud native to do this. There's no other means. And
100%. So basically here, the core challenges is to say that in the past, where we have, I would say, mainly virtualized and monolithic services and application, we have traditional operation model, based on support team level 0, support team level 1, support team level 3, and so on. But when you have the orchestrator that basically will manage in a total automated way resiliency properties and self and auto healing properties, it means that it allows you to totally review, I would say, how you want to operate and to enter much more the digital and the IT way, and for instance, introducing SRE practices to manage your services. So yes, we cannot apply the methodology to do the operation that we learn on virtual environment or either in the cloud, because the complexity and the fragmentation and the ephemerality of the objects that are behind the workloads and the runtime that we need for our service basically is at a total different scale. So it's a strong reboot, But I truly believe that it's a very strong opportunity for the one that will jump in, because it will bring better efficiency, better competitivity, and certainly as well better productivity. And what we observed, from what we learned from the digital and the IT worlds, is that the people and the team who are managing and having the operation are much more, I would say, business focused, business oriented, because they have a more comprehensive 360 view of basically the services and the infrastructure altogether.
So from Orange's point of view, DevOps is the operating model for cloud, and GitOps is the operating model for cloud native operations.
True.
So
true, absolutely true. So
I'm thinking that one of the keys to either DevOps or GitOps being successful is a uniformity of approach and a common understanding, because if everybody starts doing their own thing, it's chaos, right?
It's exactly this. So GitOps basically is a set of modern practices for deploying, managing, and operating cloud-native infrastructure and application. All application deployment, application operation, cluster management operation are under one platform with a common workflow, okay? So basically here, we will inherit from all what we learn in terms of culture, practice, and tooling from DevOps, but using the cloud-native architecture as reference implementation here. It's basically, it's basically this.
Okay. One of the things I'm wondering about, this is an immense upheaval internally, this shift in operating and in thinking. I'm wondering, is it completely transparent to your customers?
From the customer standpoint, I would say that it's only an internal delivery and implementation strategy. From the customer standpoint, what they should observe is definitively perhaps more feature, more innovation, less reaction time, if there are some issues, if there are some downtime in terms of services. So for the customer, I would say it's more innovation, more business agility, more reactivity, and better quality of service of the overall platform, I would say.
So really, they're just getting much better and different service without having to look behind the curtain. They don't know what's going on behind. They just know what they don't need to know.
Yeah,
all the internal workings. They just
exactly. But honestly, as for the end customer, understanding that the providers or the partners they are working with are relying on cloud native journey to implement the services, for me is a certain form of guarantee to future-proof features, innovation, and to future-proof, I would say, the services as a whole as well. So I can share with you that, for instance, within Orange, when we are scouting for partners or when we are assessing existing partners, the fact that they are cloud native but in terms of design, in terms of, I would say, the way of rolling out the services and implementing the services is definitively one of the technical triggers that we are putting on the table. Very strong one.
Okay, and how important is it that GitOps allows the developers to deploy and manage apps without needing to understand all the complex infrastructure tools underneath? They don't need to know about all that stuff.
Okay, so here it definitively points on the GitOps benefits. So first, what you may have understood is that it's a complete platform. So you have a single platform for infrastructure, core components, and application. It's about productivity because you will dramatically increase your deployments. And if you have, I would say, error, or if you need to roll back, it's, I would say, definitively by design, by book in terms of implementation. Reliability, because you enable a cluster and application operator model, and you will use this with a very standardized toolset. It's about compliance and security. It's about, I would say, sustainability and energy efficiency, because we can use the reconciliation loop of GitOps as well. Okay, to manage the drift of the infra, to manage the drift of the application, to manage the drift in terms of security policy. But it's as well an opportunity to manage the drift from an energy standpoint as well. So I think that yes, it's the benefits of GitOps: complete platform, productivity, reliability, compliance, security, sustainability, and the fact that it runs basically from cloud and multi-cloud infrastructure up to on-premises, up to the edge, up to the POP from a telco standpoint. And that's why, honestly, I truly believe that cloud native have to be the next telco grade network platform to basically inject all the benefits that we've learned from the IT and digital applied to the network and to the telco.
So I was interested, Philippe, you mentioned that the Cloud Native Computing Foundation said that adoption of GitOps is rising and that more than 50% of telcos have it in place. Is that right?
It's 50% of the user. It's not only dedicated not dedicated only for the telco industry, but yes, definitively we have proof of this rising adoption. For instance, you have Cloud Native Computing Foundation, that is basically the foundation, the umbrella foundation that is managing the whole cloud native space, have a strong graduation program. And in the last 6 months, Flux City and Argo City have reached the maximum level of graduation. We have billions of downloads, and something that is very interesting is that from bare metal with GPU, from bare metal with GPU up to, I would say, traditional virtual machine deploy in data center, at the edge, or in whatever granularities of the infrastructure from telco standpoint, definitively with this ecosystem, we have all the tools, practice, and methods to take into account whole, I would say, the versatility in terms of infrastructure, and taking into account that when you are in telco business, you may have very specific requirement from performance or reliability or availability. Okay, so it sounds like the adoption of GitOps is really accelerating. Yes, the adoption. I think you might have frozen, Philippe. I'm hoping you'll unfreeze in a minute. I'm sorry, Annie. I'm sorry, Annie. It breaks a little bit. Can you share again your question? I was just saying that it sounds like the acceleration regarding the adoption of GitOps it sounds tremendous. Yes, it's true, and like I said, it started, I would say, in this digital and IT world. But today, when you are, I would say, in telco environment, it's a way to manage. I'm afraid you're frozen again, Philippe. The wonders of connectivity and communication. Okay, Philippe, you're still frozen, so I'm hoping you'll come back in a moment. It's a very, very fine grain observability of your metrics, your log, your traces, your event, and you have all the management of the underlying cloud native runtime stacks with Kubernetes. And it brings as well a lot of tools to manage the compliance, the governance, the regulation. And I already talked about the sustainability and energy consumption management. So yes, definitively, I would say there is a strong acceleration of use of GitOps. And when I'm talking with peers in the telco industry that are basically all working on designing cloud native network stack, they onboard GitOps as operating model by book.
Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left, which is a shame because I think this is such an interesting topic. We could talk forever, I think, really. Andreas, who's in our audience, asked, how do you prove to customers that you're on top of security? I do feel like you've kind of addressed some of this on the way through, Philippe, but if you'd like to say one or two on that.
So here on the security topic, there are several, I would say, things to outline. The first one is the security of the component that you will bring into the system you want to deploy. And here, what is really interesting is that we made a lot of progress in terms of understanding the dependency, direct or indirect, the vulnerability and the exploitability of the component that you may bring in. And for instance, I don't know if you already deep dive into what we call BOM, so the software bill of material, and VEX about the vulnerability, exploitability, exchange format, or a framework like Salsa that are able to define how much trust you may have in your supply chain. So it's on, I would say it's on the first part. At the execution runtime, something that is very interesting is that you are able to define very fine-grained policy about how you want your services running based on the privilege and the authorization and authentication of the user that are logged to your services. So honestly, the security topic is fully integrated in the whole approach. And something that is extremely interesting is like your infra, like your application, like your network rules, you will manage your security by code, and you will manage it the declarative way, meaning that you will manage all the history and all the track of records of what have been, I would say, updated, modified, enriched. And when it's about security, regulation, checkout are not so far. So it's a very, very important point. So by book, security is onboarded in the full process.
So if I were to sum it up, I'd say that security is because deviation is picked up because of the declarative mode. So anything that doesn't comply, and also the degree of observability, which is something telcos have always lacked, and also the granularity, the detail. And that's I mean, that to me, they seem like the three really big things here.
You're fully right, Annie. And that's why from a telco and network perspective, we absolutely need to have providers, partners, and vendors that are, in their turns as well, fully embrace the cloud native way. Because honestly, from operator standpoint, I'm very confident about our ability to think, build, deploy, run, and operate the right infrastructure the cloud native way. I'm really confident on this. But without services, network workload on top that are not perhaps cloud native based enough, basically we won't succeed. So we need to break down the monolith. We need definitively to have microservices oriented network services that are fine-grained enough to play the elasticity model of the underlying infrastructure, and basically to deploy just the right components on time for the sake of sustainability and energy consumption.
Philippe, thank you as always very much. Huge amount of information and insight there. So you'll be a very popular on demand, I would think. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, Annie. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of the event. Thanks so much.